Roger Martin, Grow for Vets. Roger Martin, a veteran himself, is established a mission, which is to give free cannabis to veterans. There is a PTSD component to this, and we'll let him tell the story. Roger Martin, Grow for Vets.
All right, so Roger, you are a veteran yourself, and so thank you for your service. Absolutely. Give us the overview of what you're doing every day right now.
We have a very complicated mission. We give free cannabis to veterans for treatment of their medical conditions.
And my first question to you was, how are you working with dispensaries? And you said it depends on the state.
Yeah, the law in every state is different. In Colorado, for example, companies, cannabis-infused product companies have to give us the products that they want to donate through a licensed dispensary, so it goes through the system. And I don't really have a problem with that, but there are some other problems inherent with that, especially in Colorado, where, unlike a state I heard about earlier today, where in Washington, for example, if they see a regulation they've created that doesn't really make any sense, they tend to go back and change it. So it does make sense. In Colorado, I think their goal is to just continue to make regulations that make no sense whatsoever, and when they discover this one doesn't make any sense, they make a new one to kind of try to cover that up. So consequently, you know, we had a supporter who offered to donate several thousand of their cannabis-infused products to us after a change in February in the packaging requirements, and despite my hand-delivering a letter to the gentleman who runs the Marijuana Enforcement Division in Colorado, asking for him just to sign the paper to allow that to be accomplished.
That's Lewis?
I haven't heard from him.
That's
so,
Lewis.
Yeah, and that's
right.
typical.
Okay, so it's difficult to do what sounds like an easy mission, right?
Well, it can be difficult. And fortunately, we have a very good relationship with law enforcement. I wouldn't say they support what we do. The way we keep them away is when I go to visit, for example, the chief of police in a city that we're going to have a free cannabis giveaway event in. You know, I tell them to feel free to come on down. There'll be lots of media there and stuff. That's what keeps them away, because they don't want to be seen in uniform on television, you know, on the 5 o'clock news. So, but most cities, they'll tell us they'll keep extra patrols in the area and stuff, because our real biggest risk isn't law enforcement, it's bad guys, you know, who want to rip us off. So.
Sure. I do want to kind of get, I just want to do a nice brush swipe on your service in particular, so that we understand the voice that is behind, you know, the institution. So share with us just as much as you want to share.
All right. Well, again, I've told tell the media this all the time. You know, I'm an honorably discharged veteran of the United States Army. I don't spend a lot of time talking about my own service. There's nothing I'm ashamed about in my service. Some of it I can't talk about, but most importantly, every minute I spend talking about, you know, what I've done, you know, is a minute we can't talk about, you know, what our mission is. And the reality is that the service, the things that I did, pale in comparison to what a lot of the men and women I'm honored to serve every day have done. So,
excellent. Okay, so we've got that, though. We understand that you are one of them, if you will. How many members do you have?
We have several thousand members at this point, and we're expanding to other states, so that's growing every day.
Okay, and how are you working in states to establish?
Well, we're creating chapters in different states now. I started in March of 2013, kind of unofficially. Thought it'd just kind of be a nice thing to do, a hobby, just to give, you know, veterans free cannabis, and it's just kind of been a blur ever since. But so in January of 2014, I finally got around to incorporating in the state of Colorado as a nonprofit, and earlier this year, much to our surprise, the IRS actually granted our tax-exempt status and we're a 501c19. If you don't know what that is, most people don't. I didn't actually till they said this is the one we should apply for. You have to have a certain percentage of your members who are veterans. So the VFW Club, for example, is a 501c19.
So congratulations on that status. I am shocked that you got it, quite frankly.
Well, we were shocked too, and actually we created a sister organization that we applied for a 501c3 for. It's called Save a Million Vets, and that's the name of a national tour that we're actually in the middle of doing right now. Again, that's an advocacy group for anything other than the deadly prescription drug cocktails the VA shoves down the throats of American heroes. It takes the lives of over 50 veterans a day. I think that's the thing most people are shocked to hear. I told a gentleman, probably my age, who owns several car washes in Denver that the other day, and he said, well, surely that number includes the guys and gals that are just dying of old age. And I said, no, that's just the ones that either die from prescription drug overdose or give up all hope while they're usually on drugs and take their own lives. So the guy broke down and started crying. So I mean, literally. So I mean, I know that most people out there don't realize that when they see on the news that that Phoenix VA, it takes a long time to get an appointment at Phoenix VA or some other VA, that pales in comparison to the fact that the VA continues to shove drugs down the bravest among us throats and kill them every day.
So is that why the mission is to give free cannabis to veterans, is because it's an alternative? Is that why it's the message?
Absolutely. It's a safe alternative, and my involvement in cannabis, for those of you who don't know me, was not exactly a bend in the road. It really was a 180. I, in another lifetime, was involved in law enforcement at several different levels, including undercover narcotics. Had OxyContin not been the drug of choice that they gave me pretty much when it first came out, within a couple of weeks and when it first hit the market, and by 2010, I was taking 180 milligrams of that a day and 20 to 30 milligrams of Ambien to get 1 to 2 hours of sleep at night. Were it not for the fact then that I met a doctor who suggested I try cannabis to get off of those drugs, which I successfully did, by the way, at that time, I wouldn't be up here talking with you now.
So there are so many stories like that. It's insane. So yeah. You were able to come off prescription drugs. A next question to you would be, did you or do you suffer from PTSD yourself?
Well, I'm asked that often, and the way I answer that is that I've been married 5 times, twice the same woman. So in my day, they didn't have that as a diagnosis, but I'm sure that, and it's important too to realize that. And I just want to throw in, if it's okay, that PTSD is something that affects not just veterans, but it affects millions of non-veterans as well. Anyone who's ever been involved in a traumatic incident in their life, whether it's rape or domestic abuse or child abuse or a car accident, or you saw your father get shot, or anything that was a traumatic episode in your life, there's a good possibility that you suffer from PTSD. So I try to let people know that as often as I can, because even though I want the focus to be on veterans, because that's what my focus is on, it's important to realize too that it affects civilians, and most importantly, it's not just the veteran themselves that it affects. PTSD probably destroys more families than infidelity, alcoholism, all these other things combined. Children get beaten every day because their mother or father suffers from PTSD. Most often it's because they're taking sometimes 15, 20, 25 or more different prescription medications every single day. And we have vets come to us every day that are in that situation where they give them a bag of drugs. It's obscene the way that they treat veterans.
Yeah, and I was in the room for the Department of Health hearing on PTSD recently, where they voted no. It is not a condition that's recognized in Colorado. But what I saw was veteran after veteran getting up in suit and tie with their family and explaining what it was like before cannabis or with these other drugs, and then after cannabis. And saying, without cannabis, I'm not sitting here with my wife and my kid.
Well, and that's an unfortunate fact, what happened in Colorado. And it's more nonsensical even when you consider the fact that that I said in that same hearing room you were in a few months earlier, when the same board voted to, I don't think it was unanimous, but it might have been like 7-1 or something like that.
It wasn't close, exactly.
No, well, but no, I mean for something. Now I'm going to talk. They voted 6-2 against it, but PTSD being a qualifying condition. However, a few months earlier, I sat in that same room when they awarded a friend of mine, Dr. Sue Sisley, who some of you know, and another researcher, over $4 million in Colorado taxpayer money to study the effects of PTSD, or cannabis, excuse me, on PTSD, and yet they vote 6-2 that they don't believe in it. So I would think the taxpayers of Colorado alone would be outraged that basically they're saying we threw away over $4 million of your money on something we don't believe in. I mean, that's just ridiculous.
Sue was in the room, you know, for the
exactly,
hearing.
and she was
again.
there testifying again, and they didn't listen to her this time. It's nonsensical.
Well, what they were kind of saying was, well, the research isn't done yet. So how can we vote when the research isn't done yet?
Well, and as everybody, again, it's I know I'm preaching to the choir here. All of you know, I'm sure the reason there hasn't been research is because, you know, until Sue Sisley came along and a few other people, you know, they were scared. People were afraid, scared to death to do research because it was going to be the fact they'd be in violation of federal law.
She got fired for it.
Well,
so.
exactly. Yeah, you know, and she came to Colorado, and was going to go to the University of Colorado, and they wouldn't give her credentials at the University of Colorado. I mean, that's how ridiculous. And here, Colorado, we have recreational cannabis, and she couldn't get credentialed in the state of Colorado.
So that's where we have been. That's where we are. Where are we going? You got the chapters, you know, going strong. What else do we need to know about what you're doing, about your mission?
Well, you know, I think one of the things that, you know, I wish that we'd have been an organization and been more powerful when some of this legislation, you know, was being considered, you know, because of the fact that, you know, there's some things that veterans are really, areas where veterans are really discriminated against that kind of upset me. Most states, for example, if you're a disabled veteran, sometimes even just a non-disabled veteran, you know, you get a free fishing license for life or a hunting license for life. You know, if you live in Florida, you get about a 70% discount on your Disney World pass, you know, that kind of stuff. And yet, in a lot of states, you have to pay literally hundreds of dollars to get a card that allows you to get medical cannabis. You know, I wonder how well Walgreens and CVS would have done if we had to pay hundreds of dollars, you know, to buy aspirin or even any of the prescription drugs. Obviously, they wouldn't have survived because nobody would. A lot of people can't afford that. So, you know, my new mission kind of is to convince, and if I have to, I guess shame legislators into realizing that veterans should not have to pay 1 cent to get a medical marijuana card.
I feel like we should leave it there. That was perfect. Roger, thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right. Really appreciate what you're doing.
And there you have Roger Martin, Grow for Vets. Really appreciate the work that he's doing for veterans. He went ahead and gave us that different number, that 50 number, as opposed to the 22 number. That is at least a common theory. So obviously we support veterans and everything they've done for the country, including Roger, himself a veteran. Thanks so much.